right on now.
Andreas is the host.
Mm.
And Rob.
Who?
Rob and Andreas.
Hi Andreas. Hi Rob. I've started a little bit early, so there's a few more minutes before I'm going to get going. Like that.
Hi, Richard.
Hello Richard.
He wants to know what you're going to be making today.
I'm going to be looking at airbrushes today. So, there we go. Turn volume down. Live chat. Right, I think, oh, we're still a few minutes. What time do you make it, Angela?
27 minutes past. Just go forward. People will join us late. Got 9 viewers, you can't sit there.
Yeah, no. Right. So, we've been doing, we built the Spitfire. And last week, what did we look at last week? We done some filling, and we looked at that. And we've done a brief bit of weathering, albeit wrong, but we did look at it. So, at some point, when you start modelling, you're going to reach a stage where you want to try an airbrush. And certainly, you know, it's the natural progression of things. If you really like modelling, you'll build a few models, you'll find out that everybody's using airbrushes, you'll want to know what that's all about, and then you'll want to go out and buy an airbrush. And so tonight we're going to look at 3 different types of airbrush, and I'm going to give my sort of, not my expert opinion on, because I'm not an expert in this in any way, shape or form. I'm just going to give my personal opinion on them from my personal experience. Other people may differ with what I say. A majority will agree with some of the points I make, because it's just general. It's generally well known, some of the stuff I'm going to say. So we will crack on. So one of the first things is, why would you have an airbrush? Well, one of the things with brushing with a brush, you leave brush strokes, so you can't get the paint. The paint goes on thick in one area and thin in others. It's generally a bit of a headache to get a really nice finish. An airbrush eliminates all this. You get a superb finish from an airbrush. You get a nice flat, very thin layer of paint going down, and when it's done properly, it looks absolutely fantastic. And there's no argument that the airbrush is definitely the way to go for professional modeling. So, what is likely to happen? This is how I envisage a scenario going with somebody that's just started out modeling, and it's pretty much in line with what I done. So this is what it's based on. You are going to say, yeah, I want to get an airbrush, and then one of the first things you're going to realize is you need an air compressor. And you'll look around and you'll see that the best value air compressor at the moment for somebody on a budget is an AS, I think it's AS 186. I'm not dead certain on the figure. But generally you're looking about 60 to 70 pounds they are, and you'll be surprised to find out that they come with a free airbrush. This is what makes this generator so appealing. You're just gonna go mad for that, because you'll think, yeah, I'm getting 2 airbrushes, all the kit with it. And it's a real bargain, which is exactly what I done. Now then, first of all, stop with the air compressor. First of all, you must, don't must, but it's better if you get an air compressor that has a tank on the bottom. So I will show you an air compressor in another episode. I perhaps should have done air compressors this week, but it's too late now. I've already set everything up.
Do that next week.
So generally, because the air compressor works, we'll show you on the. I'll show you on the airbrush anyway. So first of all, you'll buy this compressor. You'll get your 2 airbrushes or your single airbrush that comes with it. You'll get one with a tank on, because they do one with a tank on that comes with the free airbrushes, or you might even buy the 2 separately. You might buy a tank, an air compressor with a tank, and go for the cheapest airbrush you could find. And what you'll probably end up with is something like this. It'll come in a box like this. It looks very snazzy, doesn't it? I mean, yeah, nice, nice box. As you know, it's just a plain box, but it's a box, it's fancy type, and you've got this nice looking piece of machinery in there. Seems to look cool, and all these other little gadgets. You'll be suitably impressed, and that's what you'll get. And I can tell you from experience now that this is not a good buy. This is not a good buy at all. We'll look more into that in a minute. But basically, this is classed as a gravity feed airbrush, and what it means by that is the paint will sit somewhere either on top, which is the normal configuration. You'll see that in a minute. This one's a side feed, and it basically sits on the side there like that, and you put your paint in a jar, or it's normally a cup, to be honest. Hold on, yeah, I've put the wrong one on. You get the cup, sorry, my mistake. And that sits on there like that. And then basically you put your paint in here.
I remember this one was very messy.
Yeah, I had loads of trouble with this, didn't I? I remember the days I spent But he's pulling my hair out and everything.
Yes.
Anyway, that fits on the side there. I can't even be bothered with that. And you put paint in there, and then your air's attached at the bottom. And every time you push the trigger, air will flow. You push the trigger, and then you pull the trigger back. And then what happens is you've got a small needle, which we'll have a look at in a bit. A small needle that runs through the center there. And as you pull the needle back, it creates a small space here in the front of the nozzle, and the air pressure, as it shoots past this hole here, it sort of pulls the paint through and atomizes it into tiny little particles that spray all over the surface you're trying to paint. And that's how that works. That's how all the gravity feed airbrushes work. They all work similar. There are others that work from the bottom, and they are bottom feed airbrushes. Same principle. It's still air pressure pulling the paint through. And these are cheap. They're copies of the really good ones. So they used to be unbranded. They used to have no brand at all. They sometimes mostly will. This one does have a name on the side. That does not mean it's good. It just means that somebody's thought to try and sell it even more. Just stick a name on the side. We will look at the differences between the cheap one and the more expensive ones shortly, and you'll see a difference.
1975 Ginger Ninja said they are very popular in the photographic industry years ago. You can angle the brush without spilling the paint. What would you say to that? Knowing how much paint you spill.
I mean, I had a huge learning curve when I started because I'd never used an airbrush before. Fortunately, I worked in the photographic industry, and we did right up until the beginning of the digital age, and further on, we used to get our photos retouched. The ones that couldn't. The ones where the eyes were closed and they were, there was no Photoshop then, but yeah, we had a guy and he used an airbrush to achieve, to get results. It was quite expensive as well. But generally, these are very poor quality. And actually, I think it's that Ginger Ninja.
1975 looks all it says.
Yeah, is that? No, is it Anthony? Am I right in thinking that's Anthony? We've got a bit of lag here, so. Well, while we're waiting for that, but I've got a very funny feeling that it was 1975 Ginger Ninja that actually made me progress.
Yes, it is. Northern Modeler said.
Yes. Yes, Anthony, I believe. Yeah.
He's come back and said no.
I believe you done a small YouTube video on the Harder and Steenbeck some time ago, and it was your video that gave me the inspiration to go out and buy that made me finally decide that this was just not going anywhere. I had continual problems with blockages, paint spattering everywhere. I just could not get this to work. And I persevered with it for weeks, and it reached the stage where I was just about to think, airbrushing's not for me. I can't do it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stick with ordinary paintbrushes. And had I gone down that route, I never would have touched another airbrush again. I can guarantee that. But I believe it was Anthony that released a video on, he bought a Harder and Steenbeck Evolution, I think it was, I'm not sure, it might have been the Infinity, and I watched that video and thought, yeah, that's the one I've got to get. And I often thank him for that when I see him, because it really did make a difference for me. So yeah, that's your cheap Chinese airbrush. Now we go from one end of the scale to the other end, and we've got here from one of the older higher end airbrushes. This is a Iwata custom micron Eclipse, and it's what would have been a higher end airbrush in its day. It's still a very, very good airbrush. Airbrushes don't they're not like technological equipment. They won't, you know, 1 year they're just no good anymore. They'll keep working and working and working as long as you look after them. And straight away you can see and feel the difference between the two. We'll put them side by side. Now there's a big difference in price. A modern Iwata custom, now not the Eclipse, but if you was to buy this in its day, so if you bought one of these now, not this type, but the new type custom they've got out, it's about, I don't know, it's about 300 quid. I'm not certain on that, but it's very expensive. As opposed, these, they're free, and if you do buy them, they're like a tenner. And I can tell you for nothing that this is heavier. This is a lot heavier. It feels a lot, much more professional than this. When you pull the trigger on this, it's got a very tinny, and you can feel the needle sort of scraping against the workings inside. Yeah, it just isn't very pleasant at all. But you won't know that if this is your first one. You will know that when you get your next one, whatever it is. Now you can get a Harder and Steenbeck from £120. You can get them even cheaper. You can get a Harder and Steenbeck, I believe, for about 70. I'm not sure on the make or models, but if you go out there and look, there are some under £100 that are very, very good.
Northern Modeler said it's the custom micron that is 300 plus. You have the custom Eclipse.
Yes, yeah, he's right. I'll keep getting the micron and the Eclipse mixed up. So this is the custom Eclipse, but in its day it was. So we've got the list here. In its day, it was quite high up on in their range, but obviously they've brought out more modern ones since, and this has been superseded by the custom micron. And anyway, you can see straight away everything's so much better. The nickel plating on this is very, very thin. If you were to drop this, it would chip off. You shouldn't really drop any airbrush, but I'm just saying that if you were to bang it or knock it, it would start to chip and fray. A lot of the brass connections in here are like a soft brass. There's obviously different brass is a soft metal anyway, as we know, but these cheap airbrushes, they seem to have taken that one step further and gone. The washers on them are dreadfully small, very thin and lanky, and they're not really much good for anything. They won't last very long at all. And that's this. This is your higher end one. Very nice. This one does very, very small lines, very thin detailing. I use this one for. This is used for detailing This piece here is another water trap. We'll cover water traps when we do the compressor, and I'll tell you a bit more about them then. But essentially they prevent any moisture going through this line and mixing with the paint, because obviously we don't want that to happen. It can cause problems if it does, and it can happen because of how the air compressor works. So we're going to pop this one away, and now I'm going to bring out the one that I use the most. Probably my favourite out of all of them, and there are reasons why, and I'll give them and I'll show you. This is a relatively new airbrush on the market. It's £84.95, I think, and it's available from umpretail.com or .co.uk, I can never remember. And this is the Apex. Again, this comes in a box. It's a much nicer box. We've got a nice picture of the product inside, and on the back we've got some nice information on a few other products in their range. And inside we have a nice, again, a welcome letter. We've got some information on using the airbrush and tips there, tips on paint, on cleaning, and a list of all the spare parts which they carry in stock as well. So if ever any of this goes, any of it packs up or an O-ring goes, or something, the needle's knackered or anything like that, you can just get on the phone or go on their website, and they'll have the item in stock, and you more than likely be able to have a replacement in sort of 48 hours, if that would be my guess. So, you know, as opposed to this, yeah, you'll get these parts anywhere. You'll have to go on eBay to get them, and generally they'll be similar rubbish to what's already in there, so you're not really going to get a very good I'm not trying to, I am trying to sand this down. It's a dreadful airbrush, and I'm not doing that lightly. I have used these. I've stuck with these for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they caused me nothing but absolute hell. This is the most dreadful airbrush I have ever come across. These cheap Chinese ones, I absolutely loathe them. They are not good at all. They are dreadful. So we can pull out the Apex, and again we can see an instant difference. So let's just pop that over there a second. Might need that out. No, we won't need that out, don't we? So this is the one I use the most. Why do I use this one the most and not that one?
I would like to know, how many airbrushes have you come across?
I have only I've got this. This is the Apex. I got this one. I got the custom Eclipse. I've had a Harder and Steenbeck model. I haven't had a Badger one, and I've tried 4 of these cheap ones. In the beginning, when I bought my first compressor, I got given 1 free. When I bought my second compressor, I got 2 free, and no, I got 2 free with each compressor. Yeah, I got 2 of these free with each compressor. One came on each one that was side fed, and then the other one was had like a jar that sat underneath, which I didn't get on with either. So immediately we can take these apart and we can see where, I know I was saying why I didn't use that one, weren't I? Oh, got myself lost there a bit. Let me slow down a second and have a quick drink and regroup. So the custom Eclipse does very, very fine lines. It's brilliant at doing fine lines, and when it's wide open, i.e. when I've got the trigger pulled all the way back and the needles all the way back, it can probably do a thin band, maybe spray a bit further. My Apex, on the other hand, has a tapered front end, and the first sort of millimetre of travel can do fine lines, and then as it opens up, the band gets wider and wider, and it can do primer so much better than the custom Eclipse. The custom Eclipse is, you know, it can do primer. I'm not saying it won't, it will, because it's a high-end airbrush, but I just find I have less problem with this, and this is easier to clean, and I can show you why that is as well. We'll get the you just pop that to one side, and I will demonstrate if I can. So why is it easier to clean? Well, this is the custom Eclipse, and I don't know if we can see down there, right down there at the bottom. So you've got this big large cup on the front, and right down there at the bottom is our needle. And when paint accumulates at the bottom there, it's a nightmare to get out. Well, it's not a nightmare, I'm exaggerating. You can get it out. It takes you a little while, but you can get it out. You just need to use some cotton buds and if it's really stubborn, some cellulose thinner. When it comes to the Apex, we've got a smaller cup and a wider base, and you can see that access to that is so much easier than it is to that. I think the access is so much better. It's much smaller on the other one, in my opinion. So for that reason, I use the Apex more, because I can spend, say it takes me 10 minutes to clean this, it takes me 5 to clean this. And when you're doing 4 or 5 paint colors in a day, maybe more, you know, that adds up. You know, you're talking over the course of a week, it adds up to maybe a couple of hours saved just by changing the airbrush. And added to that, you know, it can cover an area a lot quicker than this. And then when I do small faces or very delicate work, if I need to, I've got this to fall back on. I can plug that in, and away I go. I can do the finer stuff with that. So I'm now going to try and demonstrate why, or even how we can tell that this is a cheaper one. For a start, we've got the back handles. You can instantly feel the difference in weight. This is much, much heavier. This is made of, I guess this is some sort of steel, I don't know, stainless steel. It feels heavier than aluminium, but I don't, you know, I'm just guessing at this point. So, and this is some sort of Bakelite, like the old telephones are made of. My guess is that this thread here will split very soon, and you'll be looking to buy a new one of these handles or acquiring one, which will be easy because these are so shit everyone's selling them. So I'll pop that there. I don't want that to roll away. I don't want my good stuff to roll away. So I'm just going to keep that there. Right, next up, we're just going to take off the front nozzle. I'm not going to split all 3 sections down because this one's quite solid and I can't get it open.
Please don't break it.
So again, immediately we can see a massive difference. This is the cheap Chinese one, and if we can just get in there, if it will focus for me, what you're looking at there is basically the little hole at the bottom where the nozzle goes through, which is come on, focus in for me. It's going to be a pain. Anyway, take my word for it, there's a little hole there. As opposed to this, again, much heavier, much thicker metal. And also in this, we have some very, very fine, I'm just going to bring that light over and try and get, come on, focus for me. Come on. Why won't you do it? This is frustrating. There we go. And you can see that it's been very finely ground. The surface of where the two surfaces meet once this cap is screwed on. And we've got individual holes drilled all around the side, and that allows for the pressures to be maintained, I'm guessing. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but it's definitely a lot better than that one. Then we come to our needle. Now, the needles are going to look pretty much the same. There's not a lot in them. I can tell you they'll probably be made of a different material. They're very tiny. There's not much to see. The threads on the Chinese one break quite frequently. You're always needing to replace them. I'm going to get them mixed up. As opposed to our apex. Now our apex needle nozzle is much easier to hold, easier to find. Look at the difference. You're not going to lose that. Very finely machined. And no threads. The machining is of such a high degree that basically this slides into place in its home there, and the two surfaces lock together, and they are so the micron level of each surface is so low that when the two lock together, it sort of acts as a lock and keeps it in place. Now we're going to remove the needle from each. When removing a needle from your airbrush, always remove from the front and pull forward. If you've got any paint or anything left in this reservoir, or any paint left in the little channel here or here, then your paint is going to be pulled forward and not dragged all the way through the airbrush and left to sort of cure in here. You do not want that to happen. So we just push forward, pull out the front, and there we've got our needle. Now, the needle on the Chinese airbrush, it's very, very thin. It's very light. There is a noticeable difference in the weight. Even when you drop it, I'm not dropping my good one, but even when you drop it, it's got a cheap, wiry sort of sound to it. And it's just so, this is going to bend at the end very easily, if not warp. If it's not already bent a little bit, I'll be surprised. Very, very low quality. I think you can, when you get these, especially on the cheap ones, what you'll find is this feels all rough, and basically it's not been machined very well. So if you have to, absolutely have to, get by with one of these, what you can do to help you, and it will actually help a lot, only with these, don't do this method with anything else, is if you get some brasso polishing, some wadding, and just very gently wipe over the surface of your needle until you get that very smooth finish. Very lightly, don't push down or anything like that. You just literally want to just polish the needle up a little bit, and that at the very least will help aid your spraying with the cheap one. But that's only if you absolutely must use that. Then that's a little trick you can use to help you on your way. There's, when you unscrew these, everything sort of grinds together. Oh, there's the needle chuck guard thing gone. Find that in a minute. We got a spring, and out that gubbins comes. And then we've got one of these awful needles with the little dangly brass rod on the bottom. And basically that rod has to sit in a small hole that leads down into your sort of trigger mechanism. And it's fiddly as hell to do, because you have to line it up, and what it tends to do is it keeps sort of wanting to go over on itself. Even after doing it hundreds of times, I can do it, but it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of concentration, just to find that position, which I'm trying to do now. Yeah, we're in. Oh, so I've got that in, right? On the other hand, the apex has a single, no dangly bit, a single sort of column beneath. No grinding as you unscrew the knurled nut. Comes out again, same sort of system as they're very well replicated. Just pull that out. Very, very well replicated, the Chinese brushes. They very rare. I take this out, I want to be careful. There we go. Out that comes, and you can see they look very, very similar. Again, this one's lighter, so I've got a feeling this one must be made of a very light metal. Light is not always best. Now you remember how to fiddle around with the other one. So if I wanted to put this one back now, just check where the I see it. There we go. We're in. So just to show that, oh, well, that wasn't a fluke there. That was a fluke. I mean, there we go. In again. So out. In. Out. Yep. Just need to look where it is. Once I know where it is, no problem. In. No fiddling about at all. Much, much better. Now we look at the bodies themselves. I'm not going to dismantle all the air system here. So we look at the air systems. Now, for a start, this side-fed one has got a right angle here where it goes into the cup. Paint is going to build up in there. It's going to build up all in the mechanism below the cup on the right angled one. You have to constantly get sort of wire brushes in, and sort of you can't scrape that them angles. It's a real pain. Paint builds up in here, and I can't think of. I don't think I ever found a way of proficiently being able to clean this section here. I don't think I ever got this front end off here. So you've got that as opposed to that, which I'm going to just do a quick demonstration on cleaning as I put it together. We can also notice the front, we've got that woefully small washer on there. You can barely see it. It is there, trust me. Will it show? It's there on that front section. They're very thin. Compare that to the Apex washer. Much thicker. It's like a bicycle tire on there. Going to last a lot longer before that perishes, and then it's a quick phone call and it's there. So excellent bit of kit, fantastic. Now we put that we'll put the junk over there, and we're going to put this back together how it should, and I'll just show a quick demonstration on cleaning and other products you would need to buy as well as an airbrush. So we just pop that in there, and as long as you get you just get that in, you don't need to necessarily seat it or twist it and turn it. Just push it down so it's seated comfortably, and then you can put your front section on like that, and it will self-center at the front. It will, as you screw this down, it will self-center. Also, just as I remember, the front of the Apex also has a removable front section that will reverse on itself. So you can turn this around and have your system set up like that, with that on the front. Personally, I wouldn't use it like that myself, because this doubles up and protects the front of the needle as well from any external damage from the sides. Once you've tightened it up, just a little quick nip just to bring it round, and that's that in. place this section in now. Just tilt it and then slide through, and then your spring. Spring. Just put that on loosely for a second, and pull that back. And again, you want to just locate the hole. Find where that seats. Excellent. And then you can screw this to your desired position. I normally screw it all the way down, and then roughly all the way down, and then come back a few turns like so. Yep, check that everything's moving okay. Now then, you want to replace your needle, but first of all, you just want to check with a cotton bud, just go along, make sure there's no dirt or grime on the needle. You would use the cotton bud in conjunction with a suitable airbrush cleaner. There are many on the market. My choice is by UMP's Ultimate Airbrush Cleaner. It does everything that I want it to for my acrylics, and you can buy this. I believe they sell this in a pack, twin pack, so you can buy that and their airbrush thinner, which you're probably going to need as well. So when you get your airbrush, you're going to need airbrush cleaner, and you are going to need airbrush thinner. There are ways around it, but if you're going into it and you want to do things properly, let's do things properly from the word go. Or you can take the route I took and waste money before you come round. But then you just, all that money you've lost could have gone on paints or what have you. So airbrush thinner, airbrush cleaner, both essential items. When you get more and more into it, you'll discover that there are things. Oh, where's that gone? Such as I've misplaced it. Bear with me a second. There it is. Badger, and this is needle juice, and it's just airbrush lubricant. So what I would tend to do is, first of all, with the cotton bud, just position it over the end of the and just you'll see the fluid flow down the cotton bud, and then go around your needle, give everything a good clean. By rights, you should really only brush forward. I do keep forgetting that. Just brush forward. There's a reason for this, because if you're doing this and you suddenly go up too far and come back, it's entirely possible to impale yourself with these needles. They are extremely sharp and they will pierce and go through your skin. I've been caught with them several times, so you've got to be careful. Don't push down really hard on them, because you can bend them. Although this one's stronger than these. Not so much with this one, but with this one, yeah, it's that's just not work. So once you've got that clean and it's dry, you then want to put a little bit of lubricant on. And just put a tiny bit down the side, few drops at a few intervals. Yeah, I didn't see whether that was coming out, huh? And then with your finger, again, I'm getting it right, and just forward motions, because otherwise I'm going to impale my finger. Didn't get very much on there. There was less than I thought. Just check. No, there's not a lot on there at all, can't it? There we go. I think that's better. There we go. Once that's all got lube on it, lubrication, position your finger over the rear of the needle chuck, I think that is, and then very carefully, you don't want to jab and blunt the end of the needle or bend the end of the needle. Just position it in its guard and gently push forward. If you meet any resistance at all, then stop, pull the needle back out and just check that everything's in right. Push till it seats at home. And then, although this probably would have been on already, but nip that up. And then at this stage, all that's left to do is put the end cap back on. And I always do that. I put it on the wrong way. I keep getting the two sides mixed up. Position at home. And then what I'd do, I would normally, if I've been painting, just connect up. I haven't replaced the quick release system on this since I'd sold my hardened steam, but I've got to get a new one set up. So there'll be a little bit of noise. I'm just going to turn the air compressor on. There we go, reaching up to where I want it to be. There we go. So I normally have that set around 25 psi, 25 pounds. So if I've just been painting, all I will do is introduce a little bit of airbrush cleaner, that sort of amount, and then with my finger over the end, just push the trigger and pull back slightly. And what you're doing is you're stopping the air from flowing through, so the air's blowing back and taking the easiest route and coming up through the colour cup. And what that does is that actually blows back any debris or any paint still left in this front section and blows it into this mixture here. So that first blow will probably get rid of about 50% of what the gunk that's in there. So I would do that for a little bit, and then I will have a specific airbrush that I've got, a specific paintbrush, and I would literally just come in and go around, get rid of all the paint off the edges. the airbrush cleaner will just dissolve everything that's on the edges and release it. You know, just go in there, try and get underneath the needle a little bit, give it all a good clean like that, and then dump that into a jar, or so, you know, whatever you're using as your waste, and get rid of that there. So then you'll still have it, still be a bit messy, and then we come in for the second lot. I apologise, I would have given that a wipe down at that stage as well. So I've just emptied the first lot, and I would have come in with this and give it all a wipe round and got rid of a lot of the dirt then. So we come back second time, backflow again, give it a check round to see, make sure it's all clean around here, and then I would give it a couple of blow throughs with the into you know, a safe receptacle. Just check that it's spraying freely, and then dump the rest out. In again with the tissue, give it another good clean. Look at the tissue, see if there's any dirt still coming off. If there is, I will go again. If I reach the stage where I keep cleaning and it just doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, which can happen, you know, if you've had a heavy priming session and there's primer everywhere and you're struggling to get rid of it and it's stuck in all the nooks and crannies, then what you can do is bring on the big boys with the cellulose thinners. This stuff is awful. I don't mean that in a bad way. It stinks to high heaven. It's not very pleasant, and you want to use it as least possible. But when it comes to cleaning this, it is the best. You know, it will just dissolve everything instantly. And you know, the good thing with these modern airbrushes, they're all sealed against, so you can use cellulose thinners. I don't think for one moment you could get away with using acrylics and everything on this cheap Chinese airbrush. I may be wrong. Not acrylics, sorry, enamels and solvents and stuff like that. I think all these seals are just plain rubber. They would melt. I may be wrong. I never used solvents or enamels or anything with the Chinese airbrushes. I only ever used acrylics. So it's, you know, that's what you want if you're struggling to clean that. You shouldn't, rarely if ever, would you need cellulose thinner. But I would say if you're going to have an airbrush, these are the three things you definitely need. I would say you need airbrush thinner, airbrush cleaner, and cellulose thinners. Cellulose thinners you will be able to pick up at any hardware store. They're not expensive, and you know, a big tin would last you a long time. Lidl were selling some recently, a litre, £2.50 for a litre in a tin. Please store them somewhere safe. Don't let them be anywhere where the kids can get at it or anything like that. They're not a pleasant chemical to mess with, so use utmost caution. I would suggest wearing a mask when you use this. So yeah, cellulose thinner, and then you want your two Ultimate Airbrush Cleaner and Ultimate Airbrush Thinner, both available from UMP. As I said, they're about £13–14 for the two together, plus postage. They last a long time. Initially, they will last you as you learn to use them more and more. You'll probably find you use less and less of it. The airbrush thinner is the only thinner I know of that will actually thin any acrylic on the market. As opposed to, I've got some you might see this stuff knocking about. It's called Media Airbrush Cleaner. I did not like this at all. I struggled with it. It just didn't clean the paint the way it said. It's not fast acting. So I was deeply disappointed with this. I don't even know why I've still got it. Oh, right, okay. And as opposed to these, I've never looked back since I've gone on these. So they're you know, that's UMP. The Reg Dab, again, I think Veterinous models do it. UMP sell it. They sell it. I'm not sure of the price, but it's there on their website. I think it's about £4 or £5. There is another needle lubricant out there made by Iwata. I have used that. I have tried it. Again, I was deeply disappointed with it. What it tended to do was, after I put it in the airbrush, after a short while it would gunk up and turn into like this greasy type sludge. It was horrible. So I actually sold that. I paid £8 for it, and I got a tiny little bottle. It was more like a tube actually, something like 4 grams, and £8, and I paid about £4 for this. And in this is 1 fluid ounce, 30 cc's. I mean, there's probably something like 25 times the amount I got for half the price anywhere else. So they are 3 buys you would almost certainly gonna need. With acrylics, you can substitute thinner for tap water on certain acrylics. Be careful how you approach that, because not all acrylics are true acrylics. I think I've approached this subject once before. Some of the acrylics, such as Tamiya, Mr. Color, they actually have sort of a solvent in them. You can tell from the label. You can also tell from the smell. And so I don't know how tap water would work with them. I've never tried it, so I can't say it won't. I'm just saying be careful when you approach it. If you're going to try that method, it may not be totally successful. Yeah, and you will need some sort of receptacle to keep your used and spent paint, you know, out of your cup. And when you clean it out, to spray into, you can spray cellulose thinners into this. It has a filter in the top that helps get rid of the fumes. And that, I think, that neatly brings the show to an end this week. Sorry if it seemed a bit rushed and disjointed at parts. I've tried to cover as much as I can. I should say I'm not paid or endorsed or in any way, shape or form by UMP or any of their affiliates. I just use their products. I find them very useful, and they're very, very good. So, I mean, I can't say no more than that. You know, their products are second to none. Highly recommend them. I have been down the other route with many of these other products that people suggest using. I have tried them all. I have, you know, tried to save money because we don't we're not a high income family, so you know, where I can, I've tried to save money, and it's not been an effective way. Some of it, you know, I've tried the window cleaner, I've tried the Future floor polish, I've tried all the different masking tapes, which is a new one, which we'll discuss in another sort of episode of the show. And so, you know, I'm just, what I'm suggesting when I suggest using these different products, it's only what I've experienced, not what I've read anywhere else, not what I've heard anywhere else, or what other people have told me. These are my own conclusions from mistakes that I have made and will probably continue to make as we go forward. So anyway, Angela's gone, so I don't think yeah, she's gone. Let me just check if there's any questions before we wrap everything up. I don't think there is. No. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I've enjoyed tonight. It's been fun. I was a bit nervous coming in tonight, but excellent. And I look forward to seeing you all again next week. The show may be starting at 7:30 next week and running from 7:30 till 8:30. There's some programs on that Angela wants to watch, and so we might shift the show back an hour, back, forward, I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you soon. Bye for now.